user-defined exception. There may be times when the exceptions provided by the Java API does not fulfill your needs. That is when you have to create your own exception classes. All user-defined exception classes should inherit exception class or throwable class. They should also override the superclass's toString method and return a meaningful message, or pass the message string to the superclass constructor. Now let's see an example. Here is an example on user-defined exceptions. Here I have a class user-defined exception which extends the exception class. However, you may also extend it from the throwable class. Further, the user-defined exception class has a constructor user-defined exception which takes a string message. The constructor further passes the message to the superclass, as you see here. Now let's see how do you create a user-defined exception and throw the same. In order to throw a user-defined exception, you first need to construct a user-defined exception object by passing the appropriate user-defined exception message. This creates the exception object. Further, the statement throw results in throwing the exception object, which could be caught by a catch block. And then you can print the message. Now let's look at another example. Here I have grabbed a piece of code from your case study that you have been working in Unit 2 and 3. In this example, I have two entity classes, registrar and student. And then I have one value object class, registration form. Further, I have three user exception classes. For this case, the user exception class university exception acts as the basemost class. The university exception class extends throwable, and then it has a constructor which takes a string argument passing the message further to the base class. And then the classes registration exception and validation exception are extended from the university exception class. Registration exception also has a constructor which takes a string argument and passes the string message further to the parent class. Now let's look at what the registrar class is actually doing. The class registrar has a public int accept nomination method. The accept nomination method takes the registration form and processes the same. In case if the registration process was not successful, then it ends up throwing the registration exception. Else it returns the registration ID. Now, being a public method, it is important for the accept nomination method to notify the calling methods about what went wrong in case of an exception. Coming to the student class, the class student has apply for registration. It is a private method. The method obtains the reference of a registrar object and further calls the method registrar.acceptNomination, passing the registration form details as a parameter. In case of an exception in the accept nomination, the exception would be caught in the catch block, and then the same could printed. If you look at the exception classes, we have also provided a method protected void log exception, which would contain the code which can log the message for further investigations. You can find the source code of this example in Java Virtual Guru. Nested try block. There may be situations when the code in your try block throws exceptions at more than one instances. It may also happen that the code in the catch or finally block itself throws an exception. For such an undesirable situation, Java provides us nested try catch or nested try catch finally or nested finally blocks. To understand this better, you may refer to the example 4.6 in the Java Virtual Guru.